ill people or infected people is on the same level since, let's say, the beginning of April. So it's really strange. So it's not sinking, it's not rising, but it's on the same level. So actually, we actually don't know what is the situation.
Yeah. More or less.
Everybody. So we don't have lockdown anymore. So the social line came to the point when it was in March. So we can meet in cafes, we can go for holidays and so on and so forth. So people are not so afraid right now for the pandemic. So we don't think all the time that something is threatening us. But you know, nothing has changed actually, and it's strange. It's strange. We really. So the doctors and specialists say that it's dangerous. It's still dangerous, but we don't care as much as a month ago or 2 months ago.
More or less.
How about how it is in Russia?
More or less the same in Moscow.
Yeah.
It was open like 2 weeks ago or so. I stayed at my dacha house. So, we came in Moscow just 2 days ago, after 3.5 months of beautiful lockdown time.
That's what I want to ask you for.
At nature, river, etc.
Yeah.
But here it's nice. It's nice. It's a bit tricky, but nice.
Is it far away from Moscow? Your dacha?
Quite. It's 120, 130 kilometers. So
I suppose it's in a forest.
No, it's not so small village, but it's a riverside. It's Volga River.
So you can also take a bath in the river.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay, so maybe ask Alexandra if we should start, because it is already 4 minutes after. Okay. So good afternoon, hello everybody, welcome to the next meeting, this time with composer Dmitriem Kurляндский, the Russian composer, who you probably know as all of you are composers, so maybe it's not necessary to introduce Dmitry in the same way as I did with Oscar Bianchi 2 years ago. So we already started to talk a little bit about the situation in which we are now. That was the question I wanted to ask you, and I think it's very interesting, terrifying, but at the same time fascinating, how this pandemic situation could change, of course, our social life, economics. So we are expecting worldwide crisis. Perhaps it will also influence the political life. It's a big question sign. But we are musicians, we are composers, music theoreticians, people interested especially in music. So the big concern and the big question is how this situation could also influence the music. And by this, I don't mean only the institutional life, but also the very personal perspective of the composer, how to compose music, how to communicate with the listeners. So we shifted into internet. Internet became for us the main platform of communication, also as a platform for creation, maybe a field of experiments also. And I think it's very much interesting. And I know if you also question yourself how this very situation, or if it already influenced your attitude towards music, your way how you think about music, how you compose. Could you say a few words about this?
Yeah, sure. Actually, in my case, it's a bit, probably it is a bit special case, because I never, and I quite often I speak about it at my lectures and meetings, etc., that I hardly believe let's say, to exaggerate, I would say that I hardly believe in the existence of listener at all. Mm-hmm. So in my, let's say, normal life before the lockdown situation, I was always speaking that we create the listeners, that the people with whom we communicate are just the constructions, yeah, which we build from based on our expectation, our experience, etc., etc. So it is never who they are in real, and we can only compose the listeners. We cannot deal with the real listeners. So that was my, let's say, general attitude towards the question of of the musical communication, not only musical, by the way, but artistic communication in general. That composers, the artists, compose the listeners. And when we came to the situation of lockdown, actually I met myself in this situation about which I was speaking for kind of about 10 years probably. Because now with all these digital frames and some connection problems, etc., etc., it really looks very artificial, let's say, very artificial, what we have now as a communication, yeah? And so for me, it was a confirmation of my thoughts, which I had since years. And that also means that it didn't change a lot my attitude in work, yes, how I was composing and what I was composing about. But it, because of this confirmation, I felt afraid of some doubts that probably that was only my problem, yes, that the listener doesn't exist and I don't have to, let's say, how it's called, to direct my, to communicate with concrete audience, yes, with concrete people and their expectations. And I started my first project, which I started at this lockdown situation, was actually it was initiated by, pushed by a first letter which I received after I moved from closed Moscow to my dacha house. The first letter was a spam letter. It was this usual so-called Nigerian letter. So it's a non-existent person who writes me and proposes enormous amount of money to share, etc., etc., and describes a story of an accident where someone died and left this money. So it was first letter which I received when I woke up at my dacha in lockdown situation, and I decided that just to let's say continue with this idea of impossibility of direct and real communication, I decided to take this as a signal, as a starting point for a big project, which was completely made with spam letters, generated text, generated melodies, generated rhythms, generated texts, etc., etc. So I was for 2 or 3 months, 2.5 months actually, I was doing this project. I was concentrated only on non-existent persons, yes, dealing with non-existent authors of texts, etc. And the extended idea of this material, let's say, that the listener as I said before, yes, but the listener is also non-existent. I cannot imagine who can really listen to this project because there are no, let's say, structural ideas which come from some traditional patterns of forming music and directing the plot of story in this project. Yeah, so it means that that probably the listener of this opera is also a kind of generative personage of this virtual space. And if I received some feedbacks from probably real ones, but this situation of not facing concrete expectation of concrete person, of concrete cultural, let's say, and social circumstances, yeah, but just dealing with virtual space and virtual material and virtual audience, that was my first and very important for me experience. How I will, it's not now for us to see what will be the consequence of this situation and of this experience which we got, yes. Of course, it will need time to reflect it, to digest it, and to see the very first, let's say, results or very first reflections which will come after, but not now. Now we are in the center of the situation still.
The Letters of Happiness is a generative opera for electronics and video. Does it mean that you didn't collaborate with any live persons, I mean musicians, other performers, or everybody is fictionary, virtual, derived from internet, from this very material of internet?
It is mixed. I asked two friends of mine, composers, and they also play instruments. It's Anton Svetlichny. I asked him to improvise for 1 minute on electric piano, kind of lounge blues solo. And I asked my friend's saxophone player, Alexei Kruglov, to send me some materials which probably he had, which were not used in his releases, etc. So he sent me one again quite short solo of saxophone, and I already had a short solo again of Vladimir Garlinsky, also a friend of mine and composer, guitar solo. I had it in my computer, but I never used these. I just used these pieces as, let's say, samples, and they were processed by a granulation and randomizer program, which I developed with a friend of mine for a project kind of a year ago or something. So these solos are really unrecognizable when you listen to it. And they are always mixed with this virtual, non-existent generative materials. As for the video, for the second act, I asked media artist Alexander Serechenko. I knew his project, which is actually live generator, again, generator randomizer, which works with GIFs. It takes, just randomly takes GIFs from some libraries, online libraries, and creates, in a random way, creates a certain chain of these GIFs. It's a beautiful project, and I found that it is really linked to the idea of my opera. So I asked his how it's called. I asked his he let me use this generator for my project. And for the sixth act, I collaborated with a video artist, Marina Chernikova. She works with a kind of psychogeography topic, making collages, digital collages of videos of walking through different cities, but by mixing different cities, it becomes a kind of non-existent city at the end. So I collaborated with some live people also, but in a special way. I take this material and I put it into randomizers and generators.
I wonder what is the role of internet in this piece? Is this just a source of material, maybe source of some inspiration, some source of content? Or maybe you also open somehow your compositional process to the very important feature of internet, namely the participation, that every user can also somehow participate in this piece, in the process of creation. How far is it open for this kind of, or not? No. Not at all. No,
it's not open, and that was the idea. Actually, even the video links are closed. So the only way to share this material is to send the closed link to a certain person, or just a kind of spam sending, which I did with the first act. I just sent it to all the addresses which I had in my address book without saying anything, just the link. So it is closed project. That it's very important for me, because I don't believe that the internet situation is an open situation. It is very much encaged and closed, and in a way dangerous, because at any moment the internet can disappear and it will not exist anymore. So it's not about freedom and participation. No, it's just my kind of Nigerian letter which I sent to everyone.
I think we can show fragments of this piece to our audience, but before we do this, I want to ask just last question to this project concerning the place of display, so to say, or the situation of display, the model, the most how to say, how do you imagine the place to perform it or to watch it? Is the internet the best place, or you imagine also to show it at the festival, in the concert hall, or at the real space?
I have no idea, actually. It can be whatever. It's in this case it is open. Yeah, it can be. I even received a week ago. I received a proposal from one Swiss ensemble and we now look for the possibility to make the live version of this project. And it will be with live musicians, mixed with the virtual musicians also, but it will be completely different. It's very, let's say, open form project. So I can do whatever with this project. It's quite easy to imagine any possible interpretation So I hope that there will be possibility to build a live piece with this material, but it will be different, of course. It will be another project.
So I will put now the link to the to fragments of Letter of Happiness on a common chat that everybody can listen and watch what is about. There are short fragments, short teasers of quite a huge form with 7 acts.
It is 7 acts.
Yeah. How long it lasts at all?
Each act is about 20 minutes, so it means 2 something hours.
So just you can see the fragments of it, and then maybe if you have some questions to this piece, please write your questions on a common Zoom or just raise a hand, pushing the button reaction below on the right, and we can somehow go farther to other also other pieces. So let's meet in I don't know, 5 minutes.
Okay.
I think not more.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it's enough.
Yeah, I think it must be okay.
Do we have questions to this piece, to the pandemic situation, internet, all those issues? No, so maybe later. So let's go further. In the last 10 years, you have been doing very different things. So you started as a composer of so-called objective music, very structured, with scores and so on and so forth. But in recent years, you started doing very different things, like text scores or conceptual pieces, performances, operas, instrumental music, even some pop music and electronics, experimental electronics. What induced you to go parallel in so many different directions, and if there were any turning points that you want to mention?
Actually, it's a very important question, and I cannot say that I have an answer for it. First of all, as some of students who were at my lecture at our course, they know that I speak a lot about the problem of authorship, the problem of the dialectics of being an author or an avatar. There are some models in musical history, on recent musical history, in this contemporary situation, some models which already exist, and in a way, composers, many composers, some composers, become avatars of these models. They start to reproduce, to go, to develop in frames of this formulated far long ago or just recently formulated ideas of what it music, of how it should be produced, interpreted, etc., how it should exist, etc., etc. And in a certain moment, I received it as a very personal problem of mine also. I realized that we can actually, it's clear that we become also the avatars of our own models, which we create. For 10 years or a little bit even more than 10 years, I was composing in one and the same paradigm, yeah, which was this very structured and clear forms and noisy material. I even realized that it's quite easy to make stylization of what I'm doing and to go on with this kind of music, not only for me but for whoever wants to take this kind of aesthetics. And I started on purpose. It was an artificial gesture for me. I decided to reject all what I was kind of, what I believed in a certain moment. And this experience of really total rejection of everything, just starting with a big question. I don't know what to write and how to write, what is music, what is concert situation, what, etc., etc. With this question, I did my first step in this open space of possibilities of different aesthetics, different aesthetic decisions, and etc. It was The Riot of Spring. It's a piece, it's a performance for conductor, orchestra, and the audience. And this was my first step out of the structured and fixed scores, etc. space. I still sometimes come back to the structured and fixed score situations. For example, the piece which will be performed at this festival it is a piece which could be composed by me 10 or 12 years ago, like before this, in the frames of so-called objective music, which I called my way of thinking with this term, which is very discussable actually, but anyway. So, and then after making this first step in this open space, it's an open space for me, yes, it's I had no experience before of such kind of work. I suddenly realized that I have an inner need each time to make these steps outside. So each next piece for me, if before each next piece was a kind of continuation of a previous idea, structural or material ideas, which I started in a previous or kind of series of previous pieces. So now it was kind of step away from what I did before. And I found this for me, very kind of fruitful opening and rich situation. I cannot say that for everyone it can work. It's a very personal decision. And recently I described this as pendulum, the pendulum, which always changes the direction of movement, always never coming to the same place, but always moving. But what keeps the pendulum is this point of attachment, yes? It is always attached at one place, even by moving everywhere. There is one point which makes it kind of unites it, yes, makes it a holistic organism. And this very point is actually my inner intention, yes, my inner artistic research, the initial artistic research of this kind of to be open for any kind of material, to be not to fetishize any object which I find, and even if I find it beautiful and interesting, etc. This initial idea of changing, all the time changing, is this point of attachment of this pendulum. So I believe that even with these very different pieces, it is one and the same research which I do in my work, yes? And that's why it is probably not easy to, when you asked me which piece you want to speak about, it's a big question for me, because, okay, we can speak about Letters of Happiness, but this piece actually says nothing about the Riot of Spring, and the Riot of Spring says nothing about my text scores, etc., etc. Why it's happening, how it's happening, it's only questions, and actually I love to stay with these questions. I love to avoid to stay on the border of answers, yes, because I believe each time when I at least, I wanted to say when we get, but when I get an answer, it is a mistake. So it's not, probably I'm afraid of mistaking. I don't know. It's another question, but for me, it is something which is important always to open another door.
But it's nothing new actually, because I found your statement from this wonderful book, which was released in 2010. And you said there, I like music when it makes people question the nature of music. So it's somehow the same thing as you're saying now. But what about this kind of materialistic, so to say, aspects of composition, like craftsmanship, like refinement of musical languages? Do you think it doesn't have any meaning today. How do
it's very individual.
Kind of,
Yeah, I understand. It's very individual. It depends on the piece. It depends on the idea, on the concept, etc., etc. I cannot say that it is definitely needed. This I cannot say, because I can imagine that an artistic statement, artistic research can be this kind of deprofessionalization of the compositional process, whatever. Yes. By the way, there is German composer Martin Schüttler. I find he's great composer, and I propose everyone who is with us now to check Martin Schüttler. To check him, he speaks in his concept. Artistic concept about this. He has a term describing it, the skillness, or so when you reject the skills which you have, yeah. So, but of course, it is a very complex work, really, to consciously understand where you follow some patterns, some skills which you already have. So you have to reject it, and you have to find a territory which is aside of these skills. Yeah, and this research of the professionalized territory, it's a big work, and it is, I would say, it has a very high request for the artistic research of an artist, yeah, and it's a kind of professional statement in a way, yes, in a dialectic way. So the only important thing is the consciousness, and the respect. I believe what is important is the respect to what you do, or respect to the material, respect to the idea which you deal with, which you develop, which you try to formulate. When you respect the idea, then you find the respective instruments, the respective means of representation, etc., etc. And probably it will bring you to something, I don't know, which looks amateur or whatever, but it was a very conscious decision to work with such kind of material, such kind of ideas, etc., etc. And there are no, this I believe totally, that there are no ready-made rules, ready-made instruments, no ready-made aesthetics, let's say. Composer, as I say often at my lectures and my meetings with composers, that composer is someone who composes what is music each time. It's someone who doesn't know what is music, actually. And his work is to not to try to find it, to go for it and never find it, and to reformulate each time what is music. But of course, that the situation, let's say the patterns, the social patterns, the political patterns, whatever, in which we live, with which we deal in our everyday life and in societies, etc. Of course, it's about finding the patterns and defending, yes, a certain pattern of behavior or of whatever, yeah. So it contradicts this. It is something I still need to reflect about these questions, but in a way I can answer yes to your question. There are no need of this kind of what you said of the professional, because we don't know what it is. If we know what it is, where it comes, this knowledge? Is it my knowledge? Did I formulate it? Where it comes from? It's my work as an artist or as a human being, if you want, to formulate what is professional in my and then I try to give this, to open my formula for the others, and we start to discuss, and we see if this formula works, if people accept or not. So it's the start of communication, yes? But for me, the important thing that I start this communication from a nowhere land, from a know when and nowhere land. Of course, it is impossible, it's topic. It's always already present. It's always, everything was before. As people say, I don't believe it. Nothing was before, because there were no past and there will be no future. Everything just present now. And but it's another question. So yeah.
So you said, or I was said, inventing the music with every piece has a lot to do with the conceptual attitude towards music or art. I think some elements of conceptual art were also present in your earlier pieces, so they were somehow present
more or less
from the beginning. Yeah. So the question would be, what does it mean to you today, the conceptual music? In the meantime, it became somehow a trend in new music. Many composers shifted into conceptual processes. And what about you? So how much concept, how much material, what is the relation between these two elements in your music now?
Now, as probably you said, that before it also was perceptible in my work, I didn't think about my work, the first steps of mine as a conceptual steps or whatever. But I would say probably that the art is a concept in general, just totally. It's so we cannot even not speak about it, because it's a kind of, it's something which stays in the basement of every artistic gesture concept. Then sometime within the history, yes, during the history, it depends on very different conditions, also social, political, whatever, yes. If one concept can in certain moment become a tradition, yeah, can become something which is, so we start in time, we start to forget that initially, let's say, it was a concept. It was a conceptual gesture to, I don't know, to start the opera tradition. Yes, it was a conceptual gesture to create and develop the sonata form. It was conceptual gesture to of Berlioz, I don't know, before even to say that music is dependent to literature and to narration. It's all conceptual gestures. But when the concept becomes tradition, we forget, as I said before, yes, that it is still conceptual. Everyone was conceptual and conceptualist, because it is, I believe, probably I'm wrong, we can speak about it, that art, it's only, there are no difference between a conceptual artist and the so-called real artist, if this real artist start a kind of new, create new model, yeah. For example, in a way, Lachenmann, in the very beginning, when he started to formulate and to realize the ideas of concrete music instrumental, he was a conceptual artist, etc. and etc.
Yeah, so it recalls me also Peter Ablinger, who said that, for example, inventing the score was also very conceptual gesture, that now we don't think in that way about.
For a moment, the problem that the conceptual ground, yes, is very, let's say, unstable. It's fluid. It's very unstable situation, conceptualism, yeah? Because each time when a certain construct gets a solid basement, it's not anymore conceptualism, yeah? So that's why probably during the history, again, and nowadays, some concepts become tradition, yes? Become a kind of number of rules which start to dictate what to do, how to do, what are the right way to do, what is the wrong way to do. It is this process of when the concept becomes solid, yeah. It's probably it's a kind of probably resistance of some. It's about fear. It's about fear of being without ground. So, and art, again, coming to the first question before, the art is something about losing the ground. So.
Another feature of your music, which is somehow common to as well current pieces, or maybe I'm wrong, then correct me, is the psychological aspect. So you coined the notion of psychogeography, which I find very interesting. This is the basis for the series of your pieces called Maps of Non-Existing Cities. So could you please say a little bit about this concept? What is the source of it, how it relies in the music?
Yeah, it is. Of course, it's very, let's say, very, again, it's something very individual, and it's about my personal relations and attitude towards the reality and myself within this reality, or reality within myself, whatever. As I said in the very beginning, that it was exaggerated, but I said that I don't believe in the existence of audience, yes? So I believe that we create the others, yes? Actually, it's another important thing that we create, as I said, we create the listener, yes? And we create the other. The other, something which I didn't say at my lecture during the course, I believe that there is a need for any system, or I don't know how to call, for any situation, I believe that there is a need of other. If the other doesn't exist, then we have to imagine, to compose it. Because only with this, I believe, yeah, it's not about how it's called. Okay, sorry. Because if there is only one, there is nothing to speak about. There is no need even to speak. If we start to action as, for example, as artists, that means immediately that we start to generate, to produce the others. Yes, it can be text, object, piece of music, or whatever, and also the other as a listener. Yes, we start to generate and produce the others. And from my very, in a way, introspective way of thinking and thinking myself, yeah. This idea of non-existence, like it's not only the project maps of non-existent cities. I also have impossible objects. I have non-lieu, the no place, etc. There are many non-existence in my work in general. Yeah, it is my personal psychological, probably, question, drama, psychodrama, yes, of creating, of the need to create the other, and in the situation when you believe that there are no given other, yes, there are no given others, you have to kind of create it. There is a need of a certain gesture for the other to appear, and then of course to create the situation for this other to be accepted, etc., respected, etc. So we open the social network when we open the other. I don't know if it's clear what I said, but it's not an easy question which you asked.
But how does it refer to these different cities, which are?
It could be cities, it could be whatever. It's actually the idea of the project that I take the name of a real city. Yeah, I have Paris, Berlin, Moscow, etc. There are more than 10 cities. It's all real cities, and I create this map of non-existent cities because it comes from a tradition of situationists. It comes from Guy Debord. It's 50s, 60s. It's a long old tradition of so-called, how is the term, drifting, yeah. So when you kind of let's say forget about the concrete intentions, where you go and what you say, etc., you open yourself to the landscape, to the city, and you walk in the city being unconsciously attracted and directed by some attraction, by hidden and probably non-existent attraction points of the city. Yeah, so you rebuild your own city. That's why they had very funny practices. For example, drifting, walking in, I don't remember which were exactly the cities, but walking in Paris with a map of Rome. So it's there is some funny, yes, kind of switching reality, and by this constructing reality, because it's really by losing it you start to construct a new one, non-existent one. And that's why when I found about information about situationism and the psychogeography, it attracted me a lot because it has lots of common with my inner perception of reality, let's say.
You said once that you experience agoraphobic, and that's perhaps why you enjoyed the lockdown as much, and you didn't feel as uncomfortable as many people in the world. But I think the space is also the important thing in your music. So not only this imagined space, but also the real space. As, for example, you derived your concept of music from kinetic sculptures. So the kind of art which involves sound and visuals with movement, with space. Would you agree that the space, also the real space, is the issue for you? Can be a common ground for your pieces, or not? Not at all.
Well,
everything is invented and created and constructed.
That's what I wanted to say. I hope so, because for sure again, as I'm always saying to students, etc., that composer is someone who creates also the space, the time, the sounds, the whatever, the relations of audience and musicians, etc. Everything. There are no given given answers. Yes, everything is a question. Space, yeah, it's probably, yeah. Yeah.
So maybe let's ask again if there are already any questions to Dmitry. So maybe it's time to open the discussion.
It would be nice, actually, if there will be. But it's also nice not to have any questions. We can stay. We can stay silent for.
You can construct the questions to your personnel.
Yeah. Actually, yes, that's what I'm doing all the time.
Yeah, some artists used to write interviews with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I hope that somebody will ask. Let's wait for a while.
Probably on other page. I see we have at least 2 pages here. No questions.
No questions.
Okay, which is also nice.
So maybe I would ask a different question. So you are a musical director in Stanisławski Electro Theatre. I was once at a very beautiful operatic project, Felicy, and I saw that not only you, but the group of composers, Russian composers, are very much in charge or involved in the theater, dramatic theater. Of course, the important person is the director, Yukananov, who is also open for this kind of collaboration. But I wonder how, after these few years, this close collaboration with Yukananov and also your engagement in a theater as an institution probably influence your musical thinking, or it's
It's 2 different questions about influence of the theater and about the situation, of being involved into this. The problem, yes, the electro theater still collaborates a lot with new composers, with the living composers. Now we have more than 10 opera performances which were commissioned and produced by the theater, and we hope to have the possibility to continue this operatic tradition of our theater. We have some ideas for them. Probably, I don't know what will be with this, with the coming seasons, because after the situation, I don't know where we'll be in our theater, but at least the next season, I hope that we will have more premieres. So the only thing, it's not, I would say it's not only Yuhananov who started this tradition of inviting contemporary composers to the theater live. Yeah, if we speak about Kirill Serebrennikov, I would say that probably he was the first one who started with his platform to actively to give the stage and to give the voice for composers, yes, and to give commissions actually also to composers to to make their job. Yeah, the problem is that in Russia up to now, just a couple of years, the Union of Composers, Russian Union of Composers, started to work as it should be. Yeah, they started to create very important projects and educational projects and concert projects and etc., etc. Many new projects. So it started a couple of years ago that probably an institution for composers appeared. But before, there were no supporting institution for us, and the only way for us to survive and to work was to be attached to some other institutions like theater or galleries or whatever, parks even, because some composers collaborated a lot with parks, making performances, installations, whatever, in frames of the cultural program of park. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So we were always attached to something else, and in a way still it is like that, which is nice, but it's a pity when some kind of year or 2 years ago I was present at a double interview with Yohananov and me, and someone asked him about this strong involvement of composers into the life of Stanislavski. Boris said that the composers are happy that they received this theater as a home for them to realize this kind of theater and multimedia projects, etc. And I said that of course we are happy, but at the same time we still want to compose string quartets and piano pieces. And the theater is not the place for such kind of primitive and simple, banal kind of composers' activities. So the problem is still present. And this is first part of the question. The second was how it influences me personally. Yeah. My answer is it influenced a lot for sure, but I don't know how. Probably it helped me, yeah, to start and to go on with this idea of stepping out of the spaces where always leaving the spaces which I create, yeah, always coming to another space. Probably it also comes from this theater situation, because in a way I love theater and I do quite a lot for the theater, etc. But of course I feel foreign there. I'm not a theater person. I'm another one. I'm a composer, musician, etc. So I'm a foreign person in theater, and for quite many years already, I'm very much attached to the theater. So probably it's a kind of resistance, inner artistic resistance to this closed situation, probably. I don't know. Mm-hmm. So in this way, probably the theater influenced, but not any other influence. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the red door behind you. It's a door to a nowhere space and nowhere land, which I plan to open after we finish our conversation. I was speaking about opening the doors. I'm afraid to open it. It's just a red door.
Mm-hmm. Somebody, Sami, wants to say something. Hello.
Hello, Dimitri.
Hi.
Thank you very much. Hi. Здравствуйте.
Привет.
Привет. You talked about the time and space, and this is one of the objects of music that I'm really interested to know more about that, because in physics, so we know it's the relative objects of physics that it's different everywhere. So in the music, in the contemporary period, as a composer, how can we deal with these, the time and space, to make more difference in these two objects? Yeah, let's please introduce and explain it more.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wow. We had to start with this discussion and to have 1 hour. It's Thank you for the question. First of all, I will say that I have no answer, and it is very important. And it is always up to you. Yes, it's your work actually, and it's work which will last probably the whole life, or probably tomorrow you will find a kind of your approach to this question. But what I feel important, it's not answering this. I will answer from my perspective. Yes, how I perceive time and space. This I will give you this answer, but it's not a kind of an instrument which I give you for your work. But that's what I find important, that if you have this kind of problem, your inner problem, if it bothers you, this relationship, this question of time and space, it means probably that here in this question, which you have inside, lies your the source of your artistic research. It means that this could be a starting point for you, or probably you are already in this direction, you are already there, in experimenting, experimenting and experiencing very different and very, unexpected and absurdistic, probably radical situations of dealing with this question. I don't know how. We could speak it in, hopefully we will have sometimes a possibility to have a lesson, etc. And we could speak about that a lot. And I'm sure that by questioning, we could find very inspiring motivations for you to start your personal research. Don't look for, there are no answers, first of all. There are no answers. No physical answer will be applicable to the artistic space. Artistic space has, I believe, completely different rules of different dimensions and different rules of whatever. Yes, it has probably nothing to do with the real space, physical space we all live now. If to say, not to speak too long, I said that I will speak about my relations. Since some time, not too long ago, but since some time, I'm very much attached to the idea of time as space. And it means that it's very kind of speculative idea, but to describe it easily, if you imagine time as a space, yeah, it means that there are no future, no past. There is only this space which is always present. It's kind of infinite present, yes, infinite now, like the opera of Haya Chernovin. What is the relation of kind of future? And imagine that you have this room, yeah, or open space where the objects are placed, yeah. In front of you, you have, I don't know, table, and behind you, you have something. So now you look at the table, and then you turn back and you see, I don't know, another table. Does it mean that the table in front of you was in past, and the table behind you was in future before you looked at it? You understand? You find this project within the timeline, but it is always present in this space. So for me, this feeling of permanent presence of everything and switching between present objects, I mean, it can be even musical object, it can be sound or sound event or part of form or whatever. So for me, it is kind of switching between these objects. And that's why, for example, me, myself, since some years, I started to create graphic notation scores where I place these objects. They are all present at the same time, and musicians just switch between them, yes, creating their personal time traces inside my score. And so this was my temporary, I would say, answer, because I'm sure that in a certain moment I will question it again, and I will try to find another personal answer to what is time and space. For now, time and space for me kind of one. Yeah. I don't know if I answered the question.
Okay, so who next? Nader?
Yeah. Hi.
No, Mari?
It's about age. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, now we can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Nader.
Nice to meet you.
Sorry if my English is not good enough, but okay. I have a question. I always think of, it's about 8 years that I'm composing music, and I have a question that there is nothing unique exists. Everything that we have in music, all the composers done it, everything, and the music is going through some things like physics and philosophy. You have to have a way of thinking to have to have a music that be unique. I don't know how to say it, but I really want to compose music that is unique, that have my sound, my kind of the way of thinking. But every time I compose something, I realize that, oh, that's something that Messiaen's done it, or always we have an explanation that we can find something that others done it. So how could I reach something? How could I be myself? Because everything I compose, maybe it's because I heard so many musics before that is in my mind, and it's a projections of something that I heard.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
First of all, my proposal, it won't be easy, but in a way, but I want to propose you to change your perspective. Change it to, there are no two similar things in the world. Everything is unique. Whatever you do or whatever someone else do is absolutely unique. Even if we see two totally similar, let's say, things, it's only our perspective. If we look for the similarities or if we look for the differences. If we look for the differences, then we will find the differences. If we look for the similarity, we will not find the difference. We will, two different objects can become similar with this kind of perspective. So it's very first step to kind of understand that it's not question of the material. Even if you compose note in note, I don't know, the 27th Symphony of Mozart, 37th Symphony of Mozart, note in note, it won't be the same. It will be your composition. So it's important to have, I believe that it's important to have this as a starting point. Otherwise, it's a big depression and big frustration, which is not. I don't believe that it can be kind of fruitful and productive. Yeah. Then the other thing is that all the instruments for you, yes, the instruments of building the form, of creating the sounds, of building the musical instruments, because when we compose for a violin or whatever, we build the violin, we compose the violin, yes? All the instruments are, no one has it but you. No one can, there are no teacher who can teach you to compose except for you. You are your teacher, you know, only you know how to compose, because anyway, you will compose from inside of your perspective, yeah? But it means from your personality, it means from your physical, psychological, I don't know, experience, social, whatever, biographical, geographical, etc. There are many, yeah? And it will be only your. So it means that it will be unique, yeah? If you, each time, if you take a compositional instrument, we don't have enough time to speak about that really precisely, but if you take an existing instrument for your compositional, yeah, the instrument which was given to you from, I don't know, from your teacher or from your the composer whom you adore, yeah, it's not yours. You will not fit. It will not fit you, yeah. It's very important to start to separate yourself and to start to see differences between two similar sounds, between two similar situations. Try to hear the difference. And what is important, this difference of two similar sounds will be your composition, actually, because you will compose this difference by just initiating your perspective, yeah? It will be the result of your thinking, of your kind of comparing or whatever, I don't know how to say, yeah? This difference will be your composition of two similar sounds. So my proposal to you, take two similar sounds, find what is the difference, and that will be your piece. Okay.
Is there anybody who wants to ask Dmitry a question? No questions anymore?
Actually, that would be, I don't know, if there are questions, I'm absolutely ready to answer, but I think we had quite an intense and interesting, from my perspective, interesting. Yeah.
So you will meet some of the composers at the course, right? Or not?
We met already, it was in May, yeah. And
okay.
I see that we start to lose the audience. So,
so yeah, maybe it's a good time to... it's a good time to finish our very interesting discussion. So Dmitry, very, very much thank you for your very inspiring thoughts about music. And
thank you very much. I hope
giving us some keys to how to listen to, how to think, how to reflect on it. And well, I wish you to, as a composer, to go back to the live concert hall. Yes, you are going to open the door. So wait a minute, I'm scared about it. So, yeah, so see you as soon as possible somewhere in the world. So thank you very much.
Ciao, and good luck to everyone. Ciao.
Ciao.